Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So in this tutorial, we're just going to have a quick look at melee combat in Unity 2D in our 2D game. So we're going to have a look at, there's different ways to do this, and you can argue the right and wrong of them. The way we're going to do it is, we'll look at it in action first. So this is very basic and simple. So we've got our characters here. This is my non-player character, my player character. So I can walk towards my character, my non-player character, I can push him along, walk away. So there's collision in physics, and then I can press F to fire, and but I'm not kind of in range, and then I can push him with my gun, but when I hit him with my gun, boom, he knocks the other guy down, and then obviously I could make him disappear or whatever I'd like to do. So let's just talk our way through how this works. And the mechanics of it. So I have a lot of it set up, obviously, because it's working here. So we'll just have a look at what I've done. So I imported two sprites. This is kind of built on the scenes that we've made before. So we had made this scene that'll appear hopefully in a second. Any moment now. Maybe. So we'd made a cutscene and we'd made level 1. Oh yeah, that was just a video, isn't it? And yeah, that was our. And then it'll, after X number of seconds, it will cut then to level 1. There we go. And we had our character, who I have now reversed that script on. So we had ray casting to fire and melee attack, etc. So this is the level we're looking at here. So like, again, these are art assets we're going to use, but we're just looking at, it's kind of like a white box world now. We're just looking at mechanics. So how do I get this to work? Well, I've brought in my two sprites. So there's my sprite, my player. I added a player script. Now this was this player script that we've already written. I've made a couple of changes to it. Where are we? It's in here. Player 1 control. Most of it is just I've commented a whole bunch of stuff out just to make it simplistic. So the mechanic of this, the basic mechanic of this is my player has a polygon collider. So I'm just going to remove that and I'll add it again. So polygon, we haven't used these before. So polygon collider is like, let's there we go. So a polygon collider adheres to the shape of the sprite, and at a glance it looks like it's a very, very useful item, and I suppose it is. It means that our sprite, that the collider is similar in shape to the sprite. However, the default one in Unity doesn't animate. So let's just see that in action here. So I'm going to press play, and we will have a look here. And then if I get the player to move, you can see that the sprite is moving, but the collider isn't. And then when we press F to fire, you can see that this polygon collider is not moving. So in order to get around that, what I've done is I've added an empty. So literally I right clicked here and went create empty, and then I've renamed that empty punch, and there it is there. And then on the empty I created a box collider. So literally I went 2D box collider, and then I went edit and I've changed the shape of it. Now I've made sure that this box collider doesn't protrude outside of the main collider. And that's so that when the player walks forward, the point of contact this player will have with another object will be the front of this gun here. And that might be in a different character, different design. It might be the character's head or its torso, whatever, would touch walls and doors, and the physics from the front of the character would be a different object. But in this instance here, it's a gun. So I want to be able to walk towards something and push it without melee happening. And then this object here, when I fire, when I punch, I want to be able to animate that forward and backwards. Now the advantage of doing it this way is I could have a separate empty one for kick. So let's just rename that. Now I don't have those animations on this character, but you can very quickly see the advantage of that. So I could have one down here, and I could add a 2D collider to that, and then edit its shape, and again have that nice and neat and small inside the sort of the stride of the character that would only protrude in the event of the kick animation being played. And then this one here has the tag punch. I could make a new tag and call this kick, and therefore when the non-player character is hit, we can have, you know, if I'm hit with the object that's tagged punch, receive this much damage. If I'm hit with the object with the tag kick, receive X amount of damage. So it gives us a bit more control. So I'm going to delete this one here because I don't need it, but that's the principle of it. Now, after I imported this, I set up its animations. So and we've done this before, so I don't want to dwell too much on this. So this is its walk cycle here, and what we did was if I open this up, you can see we dragged and dropped the sprites in here. So if I open this here, I think 0 to 17 or something is what you're looking at here, the character walking along. And then I went create new clip. I made an idle cycle, which is just a single frame, and then I made another one called a fire cycle. And you'll notice that this is whatever 18 to whatever the end frame is, 33. So I press play. But you'll also notice the other collider moving. So let's just click off the character and let's just play on this here. You can see it's moving forward. So how do we do that? Well, let me delete this and go from the top, shall we say. So let's take this and make it a bit smaller and hopefully make the animation a bit more pronounced. Okay, so what I can do here is, there's the animation, and you can see that empty, or the collider in the empty, hasn't moved. So here I'm going to go add property, and you can see punch is listed here. Now the reason it's listed is because punch is a child of the player. So this empty must be a child of the player. Once it is, then when I'm animating this object, I have all its children as an option to animate them as well. So if I had a kick or headbutt or whatever else I had down here for my melee attack or a sword or whatever it would be, they would be under add properties, they would be available to me here. So what do I want to edit? So this is an empty, and on it is a box collider. And the box collider I want to change. So I can animate the collider on its own. So I could I could offset the collider from the empty, or I can just actually animate the empty, and that's probably the easiest thing to do. Like I said, there's many options on this, so this is probably the easiest one. So I'm going to add the position of the empty as my animating object. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to say keyframe this here, its position. I'm going to move forward. So you can see it extends there around frame, around here. That's the frame it extends on. So up as far as here, I'm going to add in another keyframe. So basically it hasn't moved in this first sort of section. And then I want to extend, so that's at full extension, I think, is that frame there. So let's change its position. So let's change it on X. So that is right there. And we'll change it on Y so that it's right over the gun. And then it's animating back itself. It's trying to move back to its original position. And that's it. So maybe we'll make it a little bit more accurate earlier in the animation. And you can make this obviously as accurate as you like. Oops. So that's sort of the methodology. You are animating the empty, and the animation is on the you're animating the empty, but that animation is basically stored within this animation here. Now the advantage of that is we only have to address it using the tools we've already used. So if I close this here, and then we look at the script that's on the player, so it's my player 1 script here, so we'll edit that script. So I've commented a lot of stuff out. So we've got the player's transform, so we can move it left and right. It's speed, we want to access the animator, our jump, our rigid body, etc., and is grounded. So like I said, so we had a health bar in, and we were using a line render to fire a laser, and etc. We did that in previous tutorials. So I've all that commented out because we're not using that here. We're using melee. So what I've got here is basically when I press the F key, so it's gonna walk as normal. So down here I say, where is it? Left arrow, right arrow, F, here we go. So when I press the F key, set fire to be true and walk to be false. So that's the extent of our programming to get this to work. And over here, you know, if I'm in the player idle cycle, if I want to fire, then, you know, fire has to be true and idle has to be false. So fire is true, and and idle should be false as well. Let's put that in. So okay, so we'll save that and go back over here, back into Unity, and now we're going to have a look at the non-player character. So non-player character again has a polygon collider on it, so it adheres to, you know, the collider adheres to the shape of the sprite. Again, it's not, it won't animate with it. It has two animations, an idle and a die. Now obviously I could have a lot more on it if I wanted. This is just for illustration purposes, and I've given it two parameters. So idle is going to be false and die will be true in order to transition from one to the other. And then it has a script, which is this one here, which is very simple. So I've basically loaded in the animator as a variable, and then I've said on trigger enter, if I'm hit by an object with the tag punch, then set these parameters, animation parameters, to be true. Now I could add in, you know, after 3 seconds delete yourself, etc. So, but we've looked at that technology. And just to point out here, I'm using trigger. So if we go back to the player here for a second, this outside polygon collider has collision, physical collision in the game engine, but this guy here doesn't. This is only on trigger. So you can see here is trigger is turned on. So let's see that in action again. So we'll press play, and I can walk this way, and I can push the other guy. So I have physics, but I'm not doing any damage. And then I can press F and fire. But as you can see up here, let's zoom in here and go back down. So I press F. Oh, it centers it. It doesn't work, but then when I get close enough and I press F, I've stabbed him and he falls over. So that's kind of the basis of melee. You can make it a lot more complicated. You can have combos, you can have, but at its most basic, if you had a sword or a punch or a kick, that's the methodology that you would use. So you have your player, and then you will have an empty with a collider on it, and then that will be animated to match the sprite animation underneath, and then you'll use tags to determine what happens to the non-player character. Okay, we'll leave it there for now.